Beautiful. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's get you the headlines this evening. First up, Bangladesh opposition party protests demands fresh polls even as the Yunus government grants policing powers to the Bangladesh army. Former US President Donald Trump slams India as very big abuser of trade ties. Donald Trump, Prime Minister Modi likely set to meet on the sidelines of the Quad meeting next week. Israel behind the Lebanon pager attack in the Mossad IDF operation. Hezbollah vows to punish Israel after explosions killed 12 people. Taiwan's bold Apollo denies producing those pagers. And China sanctions 9 US firms over weapons sales to Taiwan. US firms hit with property freeze over arms sale to Taiwan. Our big story that we are tracking on India Global today, coming in from Bangladesh, the latest that's happening there. Well, the opposition party, that is the BNP, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, is demanding immediate polls after Sheikh Hasina's ouster last month. Remember, on 5th of August is when Sheikh Hasina fled Bangladesh. And since then, while there is an interim government, there is no clear path as to when those elections will take place. Now, clamour grows for those much needed electoral framework and the democratic framework to be restored, even as there are now reports indicating that the Bangladesh army has been emboldened by Mohammad Yunus, and there are now efforts made to ensure that the Bangladesh army has more powers, whether it's policing or magistral powers, unlike what it had earlier. So what does this mean for Bangladesh? Where is it headed? At a time when there is clamour for elections and clamour for polls, the Bangladesh interim government is in fact moving towards providing greater policing powers to the army. All right, let's open this up. Let's get in Rumeen Farhana, who is former opposition leader of opposition of Bangladesh, and we also have Salim Samad, senior journalist, Bangladesh. In fact, Rumeen, let me start with you, ma'am. Let me come to you first on this. Now, what is happening in Bangladesh? Two of these reports, they are very conflicting or counterintuitive, one would say. At a time when there's a groundswell for elections, the interim government is moving towards providing more police powers to the army, away from what many would say the democratic framework that is needed right now. How do you read this?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me. You know, yesterday we had a big rally, and in that rally, our acting chairman, he addressed our party members, and he made it absolutely clear that this government cannot fail, because this is the government of the people and it came through revolution. So we have a very high expectation in this government, but at the same time, we cannot forget that whatever reforms we are talking about, whatever reforms the government is planning to do, it can best be done by someone who is elected by the people. So that is the reason we are asking for an election. But of course, we are not saying that election has to be given within 2 months or 3 months or something like that. But we need a time frame. We need a roadmap to know what this government is actually planning to do. Because in last 15 years, we were under such an autocrat government that all our institutions, including the election commission, the judiciary, all has become so
But Ms.
partisan.
Farhana, then are you upset? Are you upset with Mohammad Yunus's government that elections are not happening? Are you disappointed?
No,
are you
we are
upset?
not upset. No, not at all. We are not upset. What we are trying to say is a roadmap would make it more clear. For example, if they say that we have this plan as our short-term plan, our mid-term plan, and our long-term plan, then I think the confusions will be
Then let me ask you this, ma'am. How long are you open to waiting for elections to be restored? How long do you think BNP and the BNP cadre, which is seeking an early election, open to waiting for as and when elections take place?
reasonable reforms has to be done. For example, our election commission, there is no election commission in Bangladesh now. So we need a election commission for holding a free, fair, inclusive one. We need an administration which is neutral and which will give all the parties equal opportunity to work for the election. So these reforms need to be done before election. But at the same time, we are saying that there cannot be an infinite period given to this government. I mean, that's why I was talking about this long-term, short-term, and mid-term plan.
Ms. Farhana, would you be okay with an election not happening maybe in the next 1 year, 2 years, even longer? Because some of the reforms that the government is talking about may not happen overnight. So is the BNP willing to wait for, let's say, a couple of years for democracy to be restored?
Of course, we understand that the reforms that we are talking about cannot be taken place overnight, but that doesn't mean that it will take, more than a year. I think the reasonable time could be 6 months to 1 year max, because you need to reset the administration. You need to, bring the neutral and honest officers in the administration and police. You need to constitute an election commission, and I think after that you can go for election, and other reforms can be done by someone who has been elected by the people.
That's a very important point that you're making, which is that 6 months, at best a year, is the maximum that the BNP, the cadre, or in fact the people would wait before elections, or by when elections must happen, democracy must be restored. Let me take a quick reaction from Salim. Ms. Farhana, I come back to you because I want to ask you about the fact that while on one end, the revolution, the protests, the groundswell was actually amongst the people, the students, but they don't seem to find a reflection in the government or the decision making. Okay, let's also keep Ms. Farhana in the frame. Salim, explain to us is there a backlash that the government is facing by giving additional powers of policing and magistral powers to the Bangladesh army? How are the people reacting to it? Because are they in favor of this kind of a change happening? Is this what the protest and the revolution was all about?
Thank you for having me, and good evening. First of all, it is very important to understand the situation. 60% of the police have not reported. They are either hiding or they have fled, and some of them has been accused for shot and killed the students. So that number is of course very, very less than supposed to be. First of all, it is the military has to step in. For you have to have must have heard that all the police stations have been vandalized and the weapons have been stolen. So the government doesn't know who has stolen the weapons and where are the weapons. So there is a crackdown. So this is one area, and of course you will be understanding that there is a vacuum. Vacuum means wherever the previous autocratic regime, the Awami League, has been
Okay,
extortion.
I think that now regime is history. We should now look forward and talk more about the future of Bangladesh rather than talking about Sheikh Hasina. And Ms. Farhana, let me ask you this question as well, that the additional powers that have been given to the Bangladesh army, it is meant to ensure that violence is curtailed and contained. But how are the people reacting to it? Because, the protest, the revolution, I'm sure that they did not ask for more powers to be given to the Bangladesh army. They wanted a greater say in their democratic decision making and not having a more powerful Bangladesh army.
One thing I think it should be very clear at the first sight, because this power is already there in CRPC. So it's nothing new. We have seen that during election time, this kind of power has been given to army in order to, execute a free and violence-less election. So the situation, if we see on the ground, you can see that the stability, the law and order situation, it's not up to the mark. Because as my friend was saying that 60% of the police, they are still hesitant to join in their work. So in order to in order to settle this law and order situation, and as well as in order to bring back the stability, this kind of power, I think, will assist the government to achieve the goal.
But Ms. Farhana, then it brings me to ask you this fact that what is the reason for normalcy not being restored? Because 5th of August now seems fairly far back in time now. You know, things are pretty much working towards normalcy. There's also now global aid, international aid that's coming in. There's talk of restoration of better ties with neighbors. All that is happening. So why is it that Bangladesh's internal dynamics are not coming close to normalcy? And why is it that the local police and local administration work is also now being handed over to the army?
Okay, I'm sorry, but I can't help myself mentioning the name of Sheikh Hasina again. If you can remember, in 1991, when she was in the opposition, she publicly declared that I will not let this government run smoothly even for a day. And now she has been ousted from the country. She has taken refuge to India. And now we have seen the unrest that is going on from from day one. We have seen the answers. They are trying to do some, coup or something like that. We have faced the unrest in industrial area like Shavar, Ashulia every day. We have seen the police is not working either because of fear or because they are not willing to cooperate the government. So this is the situation. This is the reality now. So I think people are happy as long as the law and order situation is okay, as long as the stability is there. People doesn't have any problem with this army being given some extra power.
Okay, so then can I say this, and then I ask this to Salim as well, which is that the people are not afraid at all that Bangladesh may possibly inch towards a police state given the extra powers being handed over to the Bangladesh army?
Not at all. Bangladesh was a police state till 5th August 2024. But after that, Bangladesh is no longer a police state.
Okay, okay. Salim, respond to that as well.
Bangladesh was always a police state. I mean, if you are talking about there are different regimes who are in power. But what I am trying to tell you that in 2002, the BNP government had deployed military for anti-crime operation, and of course, let's not discuss about what happened. So that is another issue. So this is the different regime has deployed military for law and order situation. So I don't think that it will be very different from the previous government's previous deployment of military for the law and order situation.
Okay, I'm going to wrap this up, but final word, Ms. Farhana, running out of time quickly, which is that what would be your wish list from Mohammed Yunus's government? Because you said you want elections probably max in a year, but in the interim, what would be that one reform that you would want the government to implement that could pave the way for elections to take place?
The reform of the Election Commission, the reform of the judiciary, the reform of the administration. These three sectors have suffered the most, and I hope that this new government, this interim government, will help to build these three institutions in this short time.
All right, that's quite a bucket list. Let's see how much of that gets implemented in the time frame that we are looking at. But appreciate, Rumeen Farhana, for you to join me on this India Global Edition, and also Salim Samad. Let's turn our focus now to the other big story that we are tracking, which is the India-US trade dynamics. Now, well, Donald Trump said many things about India. He said, Prime Minister, he also had something really good to say about Prime Minister Modi. He said that he's a fantastic leader. Then he also spoke at length about India. But there's one thing which he prominently spoke about, which is the trade dynamics, and also how India is a quote-unquote very big abuser of India-US trade ties. Well, there's the two leaders, that is Prime Minister Modi and former President Donald Trump, are set to meet in US when Prime Minister Modi will be there for a visit, even as he's made it, Donald Trump has made it absolutely clear that in his administration, expect more tariffs. In fact, he goes on to say that 200% tariffs could be levied on specific items. Listen in to what Donald Trump had to say. We come back and talk more specifically about the India-US trade relationship and how it could pan out in a Trump 2.0 administration.
So when India, which is a very big abuser, he happens to be coming to meet me next week, and Modi, he's fantastic. I mean, fantastic man. A lot of these leaders are fantastic. You have to understand one thing. They're 100%. These people are the sharpest people. They're not a little bit backward. They are at the top. You know the expression, they're at the top of their game, and they use it against us. But India is very tough. Brazil is very tough. There are certain countries, I can tell you every one, I can give you from top to bottom.
All right, that's our big debate. And in fact, the questions that we are asking as far as India Global, we can have that on our screens, which is that do facts back Trump's accusations when it comes to India's trade relationship? Secondly, what will the India-US ties look like under Trump 2.0? And thirdly, how will high US trade tariffs, of course, impact the Indian market? We have... Well, I have Dilip Sinha, who's a former permanent representative of India to the UN, and we also have Jayant Krishna, senior fellow at the CSIS. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking to me on India Global. Let me start with you, Jayant Krishna. Some of the commentary that Donald Trump made in his first presidency, he said that India was tariff king. He also in 2019 terminated India's preferential access, which is the generalized system of preferences. So there's a history of how Trump treats trade relationship with India. Do you expect that to be doubled down in, if at all he comes back to power in his second term with India?
See, if you look at, history of relationship between India and the US with Trump as the leader, if that was any indication. Look at Trump invariably takes decisions, which favor the US business, and he doesn't care much about, how the relationship with the other countries, emerge. But having said so, the fact is, even if you look at our chief economic advisor, Government of India's, he talks about that the average applied, tariff, on merchandise products that India has, obviously for all countries put together, that average rate is about 8.3%. If you see the same rate in China, it is lower than us, it's 7.5%. The US import, the average tariff is about 3.4%. So India's import tariff has been high. There is no doubt about that, and one reason is that India has been trying to protect its domestic industry, but somehow I don't subscribe to that viewpoint of India at all, because, what happens if you protect your domestic industry beyond the point by having a high import duty? Obviously, the likes of Trump will always keep talking about it. But the fact is, lot of our exports, which are dependent on imports from other countries, US, China, and Europe, European Union and elsewhere, they get adversely impacted. So you have to have a reasonable import duty, and just by raising the duty, you don't necessarily patronize and help local industry. So I think
that's a single specific view, because most of these import duties are particularly with regard to steel and some of those sectors where a lot of effort has been made to ensure that the industrial capacity at home is protected. But Jayant Krishna, the larger question, some of what Dilip Sinha some of what Jayant Krishna is saying right now is not new. It has already been said. It was said in the previous administration as well that India needs to open up. But the question is, this is only for specific industries, whether it is steel, whether it is power, it is those specific industries. It's not across the board. India's import duties, yes, you can take out an average, but some of the other sectors we've opened up completely. So is the commentary by Donald Trump, do you think, justified, or do you think it's just, painting everything with too broad strokes?
Are you asking me? Gaurie?
Yes, sir, I'm asking you.
Yes. Okay, I would read Donald Trump's statement as part of his election campaign, because the point that I think he was trying to make was that he is the one person who's capable of dealing with these strong leaders outside. He kept emphasizing that leaders outside are very strong, they're very clever. And he was trying to, I think, make the point that he has the experience to deal with these strong leaders, which means that by comparison, the Vice President Kamala Harris does not have that kind of experience of that quality. So I would read in that context. So it is true that Trump is very protectionist and he's also slightly isolationist. But the policy on protectionism has become bipartisan in the US. President Biden has broadly continued Trump's policies. And the primary concern that America has in this is China, because the deficit to China is very high, and the exports from China to America are about 8-9 times India's exports. India also has a trade surplus with the US, and India must ensure that that trade surplus does not become a trade dispute, because America is our largest market and we need this market. So we will have to, of course, keep the Americans in good humor to ensure that we
Are
do
you
not
saying a
become
lot of this is trade
the.
rhetoric? Are you saying a lot of this is actually election rhetoric?
Yes, as I said that the Trump statement right now is clearly electoral rhetoric, because he wants to show to the American people that he is the leader who is strong enough to deal with tough leaders around the world. Which is why he said that India is an abusive country, which means that India needs to be dealt with in a tough manner, and he is the person who can deal with India in a tough manner. And he also he's met other leaders, and he mentioned that there are other leaders who are extremely tough and extremely clever. So he wants to tell the American voters that if they want a strong leader, which is what America needs today, it is he and not Kamala Harris.
All right, I'm afraid we're completely out of time. Thanks much, gentlemen, for taking out the time in this edition of India Global. With that, it's a wrap. To viewers, thank you so much for tuning in.